footing because this is where the pandemic gave us an opportunity to get everyone on equal footing. Um, because obviously everybody was clearly not on equal footing. Go to a new paradigm. We had the opportunity for our system to give us equal footing, and it actively sought ways to preserve the inequalities that existed before to the tune of now 1 out of 1,000 black people have died from coronavirus. Not not 1 out of 1,000 coronavirus people. 1 out of 1,000 black people have died from coronavirus, period. Because the government has actively tried to reduce the amount of information accessible. So there's this active genocide happening right now, and people are trying to act as if we have two sides that should be given equal opportunity to put forth solutions to problems when the I don't even want to call it a solution. When the response to the pandemic was to figure out ways to preserve the patriarchal inequalities that made it difficult for non-white people to build or accumulate wealth, and further putting those people in harm's way and preserving those systems to keep them in harm's way, then we can't pretend that it's not actually a genocide in the progress. And this is kind of where um, the systems of oppression and systems of theft that go on to actively steal capital and value from people's work, from people's bank accounts, from people's property values. These things are not going to be voted away. So when the chance to go to a digital system that then removes the capacity, I if I wanted to use a voice changer and mask my image, I could talk to someone and make it not easy for them to know my race. They can assume a lot of things about my race based on my voice. So then I can use a voice modifier. And in a digital age, you can find ways to get around people's prejudices. So this is kind of where when the systems that could have also then been used to overcome stereotypes and prejudices and systematic inequalities are then actively shunned for multiple reasons, then I have to look at it and say, what is my incentive to preserve this? Um,
Paradigm.
yes, exactly.
So earlier today, I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about contact tracing and how in the beginning of well, during the initial U.S. response, there was this big push to find people who would be suitable for the role of contact tracing, and every state, they hired a bunch of people, right? Here we are. What is this? 7 months into it, 7.5 months, 7 months into it, 6.5 months into it, whatever. Um, and there are only 300,000 contract tracers nationwide. So, like 0.1% of the population is providing contact tracing. And I just thought of that because, you just said that, 1 out of 1,000 black people have died as a result of
I don't. I forget if it was died or. Oh yeah, no, it is death. Yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna.
So,
Cause it,
so that's like, it just reminded me of that because that's 1/1000th, and 1/1000th of our population is trying to track down people who may have come in contact with somebody who is test positive for the plague. it just struck me as like, well, that's odd that those numbers are virtually identical. I just don't think that I don't think 1,000th. I don't think one. I don't think 1/10 of a percent is enough to track down anybody who may have come in contact with somebody. And we know how to find these people. We can track cell phone location data. Um, it's not like it's hard. It's just there's just not enough people to call up everyone and say, hey, you may have come in contact with somebody who's tested positive for this. There's just not enough of a response. The response and the absolute bullshit response of let it run free and let's just let herd immunity happen. It's like people. Well, obviously, the administration isn't paying attention to the advice of healthcare professionals and medical experts when they say no, that's a bad idea, or when we have the example of Sweden where they tried to let that happen and it didn't work, or when we can see examples like New Zealand where U.S. doctors are leaving the United States to go to a place where their work will be appreciated, where people will listen to them. Like we have all these examples of how to get through this situation, how to navigate it safely, and for for lack of a better term, American exceptionalism keeps getting in our way. But that exceptionalism only seems to apply to a very limited portion of our population.
Yeah, it's really crazy because then you realize, some people will talk about poor white people in America, and there are definitely poor white people in America, but it's a different kind of poor than the other people have to deal with, in that poor white people have a safety net that everyone else wants. And when we want it, they call it socialism. And that's kind of where there's this element of when, like, Section 8 housing, or um, when obesity became a disability, there's all these things that are actually built into the system to make it easy for white people to, like, not have to work and be able to own homes and buy multiple vehicles. And um, then you try to look at how these things are then used by other communities, and they're not nearly as distributed within, to the point that the notion of the welfare queen and how black people, the ones that are abusing these government programs, it's completely a lie to just shield the way that actually poor white people are using government systems to stockpile guns and meth. And the crazy shit is, if these people who are abusing these systems actually didn't spend their money on guns and meth, they would end up having a lot of money, because they end up having, like, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars passing through their hands, living in, like, Appalachian fucking trailer parks and shit. And this is like government funds that they'll be like, oh, I'm on disability because I weigh 300 pounds because I eat McDonald's every day, and I got a government fucking doctor approved notice, and now I'm gonna buy a bunch of Oxycontin and fucking sell those, and they end up having millions of dollars of government aid go through their hands, and they still live in a fucking trailer park because they spend it all on drugs and guns. And it's this thing where poor white in America is not the same as actual poor. It's not the same. Like, because then you go to a reservation and you deal with people who actually don't have government systems to, like, support their poverty, and it's like a whole different type of poor. Like, white kids and Native American kids run around barefoot for different reasons, and it's not the same type of poverty at all.
Well,
It,
in like the I think it was like the 30s, the Lehman Brothers, who you know recently collapsed because they just couldn't. Well, it was 2008, so that's kind of recent, but they collapsed because they just couldn't sustain the growth of the company anymore. They couldn't manage money, which was really what they dealt in. And they made a big push in the 30s to fully embed the consumer society, one where consumption defined uh, the quality of life, defined who people were and what they really were. It's like, oh, if you can't buy these things, then you know you're not keeping up. And so they were able to navigate the financial collapse in the early 1900s, but they got to a point where even the system that they had been heralding wouldn't work for them. So they created this. They helped to create an environment that encouraged people to spend, 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 and consume, consume, consume. And I think that that's a big component of why we have big fat asses on disability who act like they can't do anything because they've eaten themselves into a place where they can't do anything.
Yeah, because again, and I'm not trying to fat shame
No,
anyone
this
or
isn't
anything.
about fat shaming. This is about consumption shaming.
Exactly, because there's people who consume themselves into obesity, and it's not a hyperthyroid issue or anything. It's not like a mental illness. These are not the people I'm talking about, because what happens is the person who consumes apathetically into obesity to then use that as an excuse to claim disability has been conditioned to consume that way and not claim responsibility for their consumption. So then that becomes this, the way that consumption is framed in our society makes it so that it's also a hobby, in that when you collect, you are participating in the highest echelon of what is meant to be elite high society, and that's how they want to portray it, because then it makes passive consumption a patriotic aspect of how one can exploit. And then it becomes this thing where you look at the most elite nobles in our cast today, and it's crazy to me that white people continuously give money to rich white people to pretend to be poor white people. Now, what I'm just talking about, when I say it like that, it's like, what do you mean giving money to rich white people to pretend to be poor white people? Well, I'm not just talking about politics. I'm actually talking about acting. When you have Amy Adams in, what's it called, Hillbilly Elegy, pretending to be a white trash poor hick that hooked on meth or whatever, that is white face. That's what those are, white people putting on white face, making fun of poor white people, and then having the poor white people applaud them because they're too stupid to understand that these people are mocking them and taking their money in the progress. The upper castes have figured out ways to mock us and take our money in the process, like charity. Charity's 100% laughing at our fucking dumbass poor faces. Oh, look at them giving us their hard earned money thinking they're fighting cancer. Meanwhile, we only spend 5% of it on actual cancer research, and then we spend 95% of it on things that actually cause cancer. So fuck these dumb, poor idiots. We'll laugh at their faces every time. Oh, yeah, we'll put out Lance Armstrong. Tell them to go raise money. Everybody knows Lance is all doping, winning the fucking races. They're laughing at our fucking faces. Yeah, live strong. Fucking dumb strong is what they're calling us behind the fucking scenes.
Dumbstruck.
And that's why, again, you know, there's all these ways that rich people got ways to like mock us and then take our money in the process. Taxes? You taxing black people in 2020? You mean to tell me you're gonna have some fucking half-ass professor or teacher bullshit their way through history about black people being sold as slaves and having all these people exploited over time, and then have black people paying taxes in 2020? Oh, that's a mockery. You're fucking mocking us. Then you're gonna have all these white owned black artists because they're basically owned these fucking record companies. When you have record companies fronted by black people, actually owned by white people, they're using black people to put on blackface. If like if I had a song, I'm gonna go kill a nigga. I'm gonna kill a nigga. And a white dude was saying that shit. You think it was the fucking KKK, but they tricked us into having our own fucking people doing that shit. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go do a drive by on the block, kill a motherfucker, because I'm the one that's gonna do the shot. And that's like you rap and put it to a fucking dope beat. That's some KKK ass shit. If I was gonna say I'm gonna go kill niggas all day, it's either some hot raps or some KKK shit. But they got us fucking convinced. Oh yeah, you fucking take a couple bands. You go tell these other niggas. You go tell them to kill these other niggas, and then you gonna be the fucking hottest nigga on the block. Meanwhile, they're reinforcing this KKK ass mentality where you got gangbangers out here doing. If they had white hoods on, we'd be fucking calling them Nazis. We'd be calling them fucking KKK. But because black culture has adopted the fucking KKK shit that they fed us through the goddamn CIA, through the goddamn Ice Cubes, who they now are openly working with. Yeah, Ice Cube is a fucking CIA plant. When we got in, told us to start killing each other. Fuck the police. Don't talk to the police. He was working with them the whole goddamn time. Now he's openly working with Trump. Fuck these fucking house niggas. Fuck these fucking plantation niggas. They're the ones getting us fucking killed. They're the ones convincing us to go do this KKK shit. Fuck Ice Cube. Fuck him in his stupid ass goddamn ear because he's a fucking sellout house nigga. Fucking, he'd be the first ones telling the slaves to go fucking revolt. Fuck that dude because he's the one that was telling the goddamn black kids, go kill them other niggas. Go kill them other niggas for massa. That's what the fuck Ice Cube been doing for the last goddamn 20 years. Now he want to go here and be like, oh, are we there yet? I'm going to go do these fucking, Massa gonna pay me to do these goddamn kids movies because I got these killing just like the KKK would. But it's kids now, so the white kids don't have to join the KKK anymore. They can just hide in their fucking racist institutions
Yeah.
because Ice Cube done fucking brainwashed the black community into doing the KKK shit.
What's really amusing about Ice Cube is that just yesterday, Diddy announced the Black Party. It's called Our Black Party.
Another fucking man, plantation, trying to pretend he's freeing people. He leading them right into the goddamn slaughter. What the fuck does P Diddy know about as in a political party? Vote or die. Vote or die got us here, motherfucker, because you told us to accept some bullshit then.
Yeah,
So this
he
we
he
I
tried
need to
to
be
rock the vote for years, and it didn't work out for him. The funny thing about Diddy is that I can't think of anything that he's really been involved with in the last decade. I mean, like, he might have been involved on some sideline, but I can't even think of anything. I mean, has he released music? Has he done anything at all other than co-sign a check or something like that? Is
man,
I just feel like this is it's like when how's the best way to describe it? People used to complain when washed up movie stars and old rockers would get political, like in the after their careers had ended, and because it's like a second chance to get back in the limelight. And on some level, I feel like isn't this just the same thing? Isn't this just another old rock star who's got some money, who has an opinion, has a platform, and they're going to use it? But at this point, all of the inertia from their initial movement is gone. So now what? They're going to tap into some nostalgia that their fans had for them 20 years ago when, oh man, they changed my life with their music. I mean,
bro,
I can't
come
even,
up with that idea. He didn't come up with that idea. Some fucking CIA plant
yeah.
fed him that shit. Same with Kanye. This is how they subvert people, man. They have some dude in their circle. Oh, it'd be a great idea. Diddy, you know what you should do? Man, you the fucking you the pillar in the black community. You should be the leader of the black party. That's what you should do. Meanwhile, it's like 30 fucking CIA motherfuckers that came up with that shit. Like, who should we target? Who's the most egotistical motherfucker? Who's the one that think they could actually actually do some shit that they're not equipped to do. Oh right, did he? That's right. We helped him get to that point before because he was not equipped to run a company. There's no way this dude should have been making it to where he got. So they've been like padding his pockets the whole time, him not knowing it. Because when you're a patsy, you get there because part of you know, part of you knows that you shouldn't be where you are because it's too good to be true. But the other part of you is too stupid to realize you're being set up, and then you believe that you're fucking God's chosen one or some stupid shit. Meanwhile, they're just set like, man, it's the easiest shit to put on a show to make somebody think something is real, especially in a place where they're conditioned to believe their eyes. All you have to do is just get at least 10 people. Everybody else doesn't have to be involved. You just need 10 people to coordinate and it'll make some shit look super organic. It don't matter where it's at. It could be on the subway in New York. It could be in the fucking streets of Paris. You get 10 people to coordinate an event, it'll look real. And then somebody will think they saw some shit. And then they'll go tell some other people that they saw some shit. And that's how you plant shit in real world and have it be some fake shit that people then go tell the people that they saw. They can record it. It can be recorded. So then they have video proof. I saw this. Look at this. Look at these two people. Actually, this thing actually happened. Meanwhile, that shit was planned for like 3 months or 6 months or however long they planned it and made sure they had the target set up at the proper time and they had the target mapped out and psychologically just profiled perfectly so that as soon they only need 10 people. You don't even need 10 people. 10 people is a lot, really. You need two people and sometimes even one. I don't think people really understand how easy it is to like create patsies to the point where when you're talking about this is not conspiracies, this is shit where you're manipulating people. It's super easy to do because kids do that shit all the time. It's super easy to manipulate people. The issue is what's the end game to the manipulation and how's the scale of the manipulation, how much money's involved in the manipulation, and then who planned it and how long have they had it planned for. There's all these things that then people conflate with conspiracy theories because a conspiracy theory has never actually proven. Like once you have facts and points of uh triangulation for data, then it's not a theory anymore. So this is kind of where people get manipulated all the fucking time. So this is like, what is Diddy? What does Diddy think his end goal is? Does he think he really is going to start up? Like,
what
does he really think that?
what has Diddy's goal ever been in any of his public endeavors? It's been to make money and to push the cause of Diddy, which is to make more money and to gain more public presence. He wanted to compete with what was it God, I mean, he had his clothing line for a while,
Mhm.
and then that disappeared. Um, Back when there were all the hip hop centric clothing lines that were all over
Yeah.
the place before they got absorbed by what is it? Echo got absorbed by Target, something like that. You could get
His was John, and then
yeah, Sean John.
what's his name? Jay Z had
Yeah,
Rockaware.
Rockaware got absorbed by something else. What was Russell Simmons?
G Unit had one too.
I mean, that,
Everybody try again. It's like they were just capitalizing off the black community and then trying to make it seem like, oh, we're helping people out. And you see that the money's not going into the black community at all in most of these cases. So that's kind of where it's so frustrating to see all these people just basically exploit the shit out of their community.
yeah. But what can you do? People like to be exploited. It seems. That came out wrong. People don't like to be exploited knowingly. They want to believe that they're part of something. I see that all the time. I see people who they share what they think is funny, not realizing that it speaks the opposite of what they think. They want to complain about Hunter Biden's drug problem and don't realize that they're just playing into the hands of people that want to see this country fall apart. Because all that does is reinforce this notion that's like, oh, we can just deride people that are struggling. When the reality is everyone struggles, everyone has problems, and the weirdest part is when, of course, when it's people who clearly have issues with substance abuse, like like alcohol problems, and then they're making fun of somebody who's got a drug problem. It's like, man, they can't even see their face in the mirror. That's how bad their vision is.
Yeah, right. Oh man. Well, and that's another, like, I love that Joe Biden has compassion for his son. But motherfucker, he's the one that created the problem. He's part of the reason.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so frustrated that we get these old white men who create the problems as then put forth as the solution for the problem. Like, motherfucker, he created it. He was literally there when they did the fucking crime bill, and that's why he's got to feel bad about it, because his son fucking suffered, and we got to stop pretending he didn't fucking create the environment that fucked his son up.
Oh my goodness.
If they didn't do
So
that shit,
so as a corollary to colonialism, and then some group of people came in and created a problem, and now that the problem has developed, the body of people who are affected by this problem are demanding that the people who created the problem come back and fix it. This is neocolonialism in full
yep,
effect.
yep.
This is
And they that
100% neocolonialism.
who you think put that narrative in the community for them to be the saviors? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
that's,
shit didn't happen on accident, bro.
oh, it's just so insidious. and that
Oh,
and
white man will save you. You kids, he's the one that you love, right? He loves rap music and Cardi B. He knows what WAP is.
Wait, are you talking about Bernie Sanders now?
He don't matter either one of them. They do the same shit. Either one of those old white men. They'll do. I was never a Bernie fan.
Yeah,
People would
no.
assume I was a Bernie bro because of the way I diss Biden. Man, I just want fucking democracy to be a real thing and not a fantasy that was created by white men to deceive everybody. Because that's what it's been my entire life. And I'd love to believe in Bernie, but I never fucking bought Bernie for a second because he was there marching with MLK and ain't shit changed since he was marching. So why the fuck would I ever trust Bernie? Nah,
Well,
I'm
it's
trying to
interesting.
like
Democracy came from Greece, right? That's where we like to refer to as the cradle of democracy.
technically, but they had slaves and shit too.
I know,
So
but democracy didn't work out for that iteration of Greek politics. It
because they
still
used
failed.
because
And
they didn't have actual democracy.
yeah, and
The
then when they try to set it up in Rome, it also failed.
because they still didn't like include women in a lot of it, and they still didn't have actual free society. So it was democracy in name only in the holy Greece that this society loves to put up on a pedestal. If anything, the closest thing, well, it wasn't really even meant to be democracy, but it's more so the democratic distribution of resources, which is the most important thing happened in ancient China, if anything. And that's kind of where, like, yeah, you can vote all day, but where the capital and resources goes is what matters.
Well,
So
I think New Zealand. I mean, they're a parliamentary democracy, but I think they're like as close as it gets to a functional democracy at this point.
they also have like a tiny amount of population, and that's kind of where the shit doesn't scale.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even
I mean,
it's
maybe
it.
there's just a mistake to try to have 1 billion people in a country. Yeah, New Zealand's 4.88 million people.
well,
So if they
China's
can
got
get
1.4 billion, and they've got a really complex system of meritocracy where you have to do well in school if you want to get a good job, or if you want to excel into politics or do anything, you have to do well in school. And they've got probably the world's oldest continuous education system, uh,
But people
going back
cheated.
2,000 years.
But people have been cheating it probably for 2,000
That's
years.
true, but
Most notorious aspect is the fucking rich people buy it. They Lori Laughlin their way through the shit too.
yeah,
I know that shit's been going on because the fucking students would complain about it, and that's why a lot of them came to America because they couldn't afford to cheat their way through the system, so they couldn't compete with like. That's why a lot of the Chinese kids that came over were so fucking rich because they were like, well, we can't compete with the other super wealthy kids, so we'll go over here and cheat our way through the American system in a lot of cases,
yeah,
and that's like, that's what they did because that's what got rewarded. The system was meant, it looks like a meritocracy, but everybody knows you pay your way through. And some people, because the test is fucking impossible. It's a 900 page test or some shit.
yeah,
So it's like impossible. There's no way that somebody's like, there's like the people that then can work their way through are actually the 0.1% because they make it so difficult that only fucking abnormal mutants that have evolved past our species are going to be the ones that actually don't cheat their way through. So it's this crazy ass system that then it's like, yeah, the same way that the
my
um
mom and two of my uncles score in the top percentile in Chinese exams.
yeah. But
It's
now
like,
there's robots that can do that shit, bro.
yeah.
If somebody built a machine or an AI to take the test. Because I
In
met
so in 2016, Xi Jinping and his singular party action, they it looks like they rounded up 1 million Chinese officials who had engaged in corrupt activities and punished them.
associated with the test.
Yeah, they were
I'm not surprised, yeah.
they went after him, and it's a range from low-ranking officials to top ministers, as well as members of the business and media establishment. And it says that they have been pursuing suspects who have fled the country,
Yep.
and these are people who are guilty of bribery, abuse of power, other crimes.
I mean, it was notorious, man. If you just talk to enough Chinese students that came to America that were like first generation and here specifically for education, it was such a problem that almost every person you talk to was like, "Oh yeah, this is like why I came here."
You know, it's funny. I can't understand Chinese, but whenever I watch Chinese Parliament or any kind of basically China's version of C-SPAN, some guy gets up there in front of the mic, and you can tell they're pissed off, and not just pissed off, but like incensed, ready to start breaking shit, but they don't because that's where they're at. They're kind of in this between the rock and the hard place where the only thing left is go after corruption or get consumed by the system itself.
Yep.
I think that's the dilemma is that none of this stuff scales. None of it. Socialism only works on a small scale. Democracy only works on a small scale. What do we?
Capitalism only works on a small scale.
Capitalism doesn't even work on a small scale.
Right, yeah.
It eats itself.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Um, and so we've got these examples of republics, and eventually they become empires. There's we haven't figured out a way to manage large scale population of any kind because there's always some asshole who puts on spray tan who says that he's not getting a good deal out of it when the goal is to make a globally equitable trade deal. Oh, we're getting the raw end of the deal. No, everyone's getting the same deal, but that's not good enough.
Well, and sometimes I wonder if it is the notion of the individual that is the impediment. Obviously, there's like an obvious element to it, but in the sense of if we didn't have individuality, we might not be able to plan at all. So there's the notion of it's hard to tell where the sense of the individual identity becomes our impediment to our own progress. and if
Yeah.
we can't overcome that at all, or if it's something that is inherently like maybe there's a planet like a Zen planet where the ego never formed, but people were still able to develop abstract planning.
On Zen World.
But it was like it's like around the group instead of the individual because if you look at our biological imperative, it's to preserve ourselves individually. Everything we do is to preserve ourselves. Even if at a higher level it becomes abstract and we become altruistic, there's some level of preserving ourself in that we're trying to make our bond with the uh, community stronger to preserve our value in the community to preserve ourselves. So anytime people try to act like the shit they do isn't to preserve self, they're lying or don't understand biological imperatives. Um, that said, I do believe there is the possibility for a species to exist that has a different framework in which we can still speak. You don't have to be like, oh, the only way we can get there is through telekinesis and have to know what everybody's thinking all the time. Like, no, I don't think it has to be like that. But it's more so our DNA and our inherent biological uh, motive has to be completely different and not focused around self-preservation. Even if it's not even about the preservation of our species, if our biological imperative was like preserve the ecosystem, that's going to put us in a completely different civilization framework than the one we're in now, where it's almost, well, and this is why they frame Chinese culture as bad, because a lot of Chinese cultural frameworks have been about not putting the individual first and have been about putting the community first. So when that cultural framework exists, it definitely threatens the framework in which the individual is the focus. And that's kind of why this country goes so hard against what they perceive to be communism or any sort of ideology that puts the group above the individual.
Man, when did our when did society, I just read recently that in Indonesia, every year they get out their dead and they put clothes on them and they hang out with them, give them cigarettes and water and food, at least offer it to them.
Thinking about that, it's really crazy.
And
I
it's,
mean, it's crazy to us.
well, I don't even think it's that crazy. I think it's actually kind of cool.
I think it's fucking crazy as shit. Like, I'm not gonna act like I don't think it's crazy in the sense of like just the notion of like, I hope they're fucking sanitizing that shit. Like,
Apparently, they use a lot of preservatives because these
bro,
they look mummified, like holy shit, mummified.
grosses me out. I'm not like I'm a Nazarite. Like I don't talk about that shit. We're not supposed to touch dead bodies. There's like four rules we have. We're not supposed to touch dead bodies for reasons I'm not going to go into because it'll sound even crazier. But I'm not like that's one of the things. Like my imperative is to not get close to dead bodies.
Yeah,
Like that shit is then that is completely crazy to me, and I have no problem saying it because I don't care about being politically correct, but further I have a cultural reason why it's crazy to
yeah.
me. So again, it's like some people will be like, I don't want to offend them. Like I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying to me as an individual who has a set
I just
of
don't think it's that. I at this point it's kind of like, oh, sure, 2020. What else can they throw at us? What other weird shit's gonna happen? I'm not saying it's crazy. I just think I think it's just kind of
I
odd.
that's what I'm saying. I'm actively because again, I am not afraid to say what my is on my mind in that it's not a judgment about it being bad. It's my inability to touch certain things or
Yeah,
be around certain things because it makes me feel like it causes that disharmony in my inner being that then makes me feel like something's off. Like I'm not supposed to be here. And
yeah,
that's where if like other people don't feel that, I cannot imagine like even being like when we go to wakes and you have like you don't have to look in, but like the closer I get to a dead body, I don't care what like if it's about to be interned, that shit like it causes disharmony in my inner being to the point where I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like the closer I get in proximity, it's like a sensor like warning, proximity warning. And that's what I'm saying. The fact that other people don't get that is crazy to me. That shit is crazy to me.
And the last few funerals that I attended, the person in the casket looked nothing like the person that I knew in life. It was such a there's always this really strong disconnect for me where when I look inside, I almost don't recognize the person laying there, the body laying there. It's really surreal for me. I've been to quite a few funerals though, and every time it's just I don't know this person, which is really hard because I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that I know, and there are people crying and people's parents are around, and everyone's trying to console other people, and I guess I'm just not really in tune with the whole mass crying session. It's a very strange experience. It's like kind of like a church moment, but it's also not. It's hard for me to reconcile because I'm surrounded by people that I know, and everyone's hurting, and everyone's sad. Everyone's trying to come to terms with this event, and I'm just left there thinking, what am I doing here?
No, man, I'm okay. I'm almost worse in that. So just to give this, well, okay, I won't even say what you're doing is bad because I like I will say I'm more extreme, not worse. So just to give backstory, like when I must have been like 4 or 5. I can remember. However, I don't know however old I was. It doesn't matter the age. I remember being at the hospital when my great grandmother was like passing and like looking through the hospital like glass door and like seeing her pass. And then as soon as she passed, it wasn't her anymore.
Yeah,
So like at that age, I started to recognize immediately, like as soon as a person passes, like that body is not them. Like that body is just like matter unless you bring something back into it, because then you have the possibility, like let's let's assume that a spirit is not real. If somebody's brain goes offline and you bring them back, you have the possibility to miswire their brain just on that level. So the person you bring back, it may be a Phineas Gage where I don't know if anybody's heard this tale of this guy who got a railroad spike
oh yeah,
driven
he's
through
great.
the frontal lobe, and his personality completely changed. Well, that can happen
He also
if
couldn't remember anything. Like
his short term memory, his
yeah,
capacity for short term memory.
like
He's
every
like
day it was the same new day.
psychology, exactly. So he's like an example they teach in psychology to give like the backstory of how they started to learn about location of functionality in the brain, because before Phineas Gage, a lot of psychology was pseudoscience, and you had phrenologists and people trying to tell you about your personality based on lumps on your
Yeah,
head.
I was just trying
Yet
to
I
remember what that was called.
digress. Yeah, so yet I digress. The issue with bringing people back from the dead is not to say that you shouldn't try. There's just the potential for side effects that you don't anticipate, and in that it might reduce a person's quality of life.
Well,
So then
in science fiction, they explore the concept of bringing people back, and in a lot of times, it's like a cautionary tale about you might not get back what you expect, or it might be something entirely different, something that you don't want.
yeah. I mean, but that's based on the reality of like the sci-fi is based on reality.
Yeah,
It's not like that trope they just pull it out of their ass. It's that there is like again, if you're brain activity flatlines and your heart activity flatlines, there are all these things about connective tissue and decay that then, depending on how long someone's dead, there may just be irreparable damage or irreversible changes to that person. And this is where once somebody's dead, because we have no idea of what's actually going on, there is an imperative to bring them back because we don't want to let that person go. But we have no idea what they could be being released into or going into, in that this is like obviously what a lot of philosophies and religions have been based on, but our science can't tell us. So when we spend so much time fighting to hold on to people that are already somewhere that eventually everybody has to go, it becomes this weird exercise that is for us on this side and not for the person on the other side necessarily,
Yeah.
which then gets back to like what I feel is like preserving value and status in the group. Because it's like, if you let people go and don't cry about them being in a place where they don't have to deal with the shit we all have to deal with in 2020, then people see you as detached, when in reality it's like that person no longer has to wake up into the same fucking shitty reality that we all have to wake up into. Why wouldn't you feel happy for that person? And I think there's a sense of, you have to be able to understand that a lot of our pain actually comes from our receptors and our capacity to feel pain, and not because it's like people don't comprehend the time that they're not dreaming as being time when they're not feeling anything, because I think that's also scary. It when you're sleeping and not feeling dreams or reality, you're not feeling anything. Your body's awake and it's somewhat sensitive to the real world. But if nobody touches you or if nobody makes a loud enough noise, technically you've receded into the nothingness. And that shit scares some people for some reason. And that's why they spend lifetimes creating fairy tales about not receding into the nothingness, as if they don't do it every fucking day because they're just scared, as far as I can tell.
You know, I wonder about people that don't dream. Like, uh, is it? I mean, I know that there are explanations like, oh, it means you've completed your dream cycle and your brain is flushing the
Everybody
chemicals.
dreams. Everybody dreams.
Everyone
Some
dreams.
people just don't remember the dreams, is what it is.
Yeah.
Everybody has to dream. It's like it's part of biophysiology, in that the cycle that happens during rapid eye movement is meant to clear your brain of what's known as free radicals. And if you don't hit REM sleep, it's nearly impossible to clear your brain of free radicals, which is why people can die from sleep deprivation. So there is a sense of, when people say they don't dream, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They just don't know what they're talking about. Everybody actually dreams. Everybody doesn't remember their dreams, is what it is.
I wonder if then if there are some people who never who have such I gotta figure out how to say this right. I wonder if there are people who have such poor sleeping conditions that they're only able to achieve REM cycle maybe one time the entire night, and that's not enough to clear the brain chemistry. Um, I wonder if that's these are the people who think that they don't dream because they're
Yeah,
constantly woken up, and so they never actually get to complete the cycle, or they never enter it even.
it takes 4 hours to get into that, like into that state, and
Yeah,
this is one of the issues. If you wake up, it's not exact. It's not like on the dot, but it takes roughly 4 hours to go through the different. It's the alpha, beta, gamma,
theta state.
delta, and I think it's in the between the delta and the gamma state that REM cycles happen. I have a degree in psychology, so I'm going roughly based off of my memory. So I'm obviously, if I'm wrong, whatever, people can check me on it. The issue is that it takes roughly 4 hours to get to the cycles in which REM sleep actually happens. So again, if people aren't sleeping for at least 4 hours, then they're not actually getting to these points and never clearing their free radicals. So then they, they might get one REM cycle every 16 hours of broken sleep, and then they start to gain weight or start to have cancer. Or there's probably all these things that are side effects of never actually clearing their free radicals, that then people who have been trained to then be proud about not getting sleep are doing to themselves. Like, it used to be cool, well, it still is. It's like a thing in America to be proud about not getting sleep, and you brag about, oh man, I couldn't get to sleep till this, and woke up, had to wake up at 6, couldn't we get to sleep till 3, and woke up at 6, and then I go to work 12 hours, get it done. And that's like, then you have to go to the doctor because you can't fucking shit because your cycle's off, and then it becomes an impacted bowel, and then it becomes colon cancer, and then these people never actually get to cash in on their fucking 401ks because the cycle that they're stuck in never actually gives their bodies the time to heal through their sleep cycles or through their physical cycles. And this is where I see it, and that's where I'm like, the freedom that people have developed in their mind as a concept is really the capacity to hit REM sleep and like be able to like stretch and move your body. That's the freedom that exists in everybody's mind, that you have to actually become uber wealthy to get if you don't just devote yourself to basically a monastic lifestyle in this context. And that's again like, you really have to become a monk in order to stay mentally healthy enough to know when to put yourself to bed. Have to know when to play a game. You have to know when to read a comic book. You have to know when to read a book. You have to know when to listen to music. You have to know when you need to dance, because otherwise you're going to get stuck in a cycle where they're telling you you need to cut your sleep and go to work. And that's the only way you're a valuable citizen, because that is the narrative that gets reinforced at your job. It gets reinforced in the media. It gets reinforced in the churches, and it gets reinforced at the fucking Thanksgiving table when people are like, "So what are you doing now? What's your job?" And they just really brag about the thing that they can't wait to brag, and they're like, itching and moving in their seat to tell you about the promotion they got, because that's the only fucking sense of self-worth they have in this broken ass system, and they haven't gotten enough sleep to realize that that's like a douchey thing to do, to like ask somebody about their job and their situation just to tell them about your own successes. But this is like, America has us so conditioned and ready to fire up the right questions to get them to set up the questions to ask you about your successes. And it's like, it's so transparent that it's funny when like somebody asks me those questions and I sidestep them to then not set up the rebuttal to get to their questions, and then we end up on some different track. It frustrates America.
So, speaking of knowing when to read or sit or to dance or to play or to just do something, knowing when to think. Um, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's the end of the first 8 weeks, and I finished all my finals and all that kind of good stuff. And in the last week, I decided that I was going to put Community on and just have it on in the background, because I feel like that's a good school related you know form of entertainment, background noise, way to track the passage of time. And I got to the episode of Hawkthorne, Journey to the Center of Hawkthorne, where it's like a 30-year-old video game where you have to defeat Pierce Hawthorne's father to get his inheritance. And lo and behold, I went and found this game. It's available on Reddit. A link to it is the to the what you call it, to the download itself, and it's everything that you remember from that episode of the TV show. You can go and play this game, and it's actually pretty fun. It's like it has a bunch of nods to Mario and Zelda 2, and there's some aspects of it that are kind of Final Fantasy like, old school Final Fantasy, Nintendo, Sega, Master System Final Fantasy, not even Genesis or Super Nintendo, anything like that. Not nearly that complex, and it's really fun. I'm gonna put a link to it in the comments here, but it was really interesting. This is like a game created for to reference a television show, referencing a game that never actually was supposed to exist. And so I got to get a little bit closer to some characters that, some fictional characters that I enjoy. And then it occurred to me that I mean, I installed this on this really low powered computer that I've got because I figured, why not? I don't really use this thing for much. I might as well use it for something. And then I realized that this computer itself was vastly overpowered for things like running a Nintendo emulator or a Sega Master System or Genesis emulator. I'm sure it could run loops around run circles around like a Super Nintendo. I bet it could play Nintendo 64 games. But this is the kind of thing that starts to struggle with more modern AAA rated games. I don't think it can play any of them actually. And part of me wants to see just how much this little tiny computer can do because I'm always surrounded by computers. I'm always surrounded by the opportunity to listen to music or to watch a movie or to read. I think I'm trying to find a space where I can escape those things and just play. I think that's actually hard to do, like the
Oh,
older
for
we
sure.
get.
Well, and I think that you have to like actively do it, which is one of the reasons where I always one okay. One of my degrees is technically in game design, but the way they called it is immersive mediated environments. So it doesn't sound like games because it was at a time when game design wasn't cool in academia. Um, so they did a lot of study on the human response to media. So it wasn't just games, and they did, how people responded to commercials and television shows. Anyway, it was interesting to me to see what goes into even the lowest, like, it takes a lot to design even the lowest visual quality game as long as there's actually a story involved. You can design a shitty game in a day and launch it, but something that actually takes time and effort, it may not visually look like a AAA title, but that Hawthorne game as an example, they might have put hundreds of hours. They probably put hundreds of hours into that design because when you realize what it takes to actually create a branch storyline and put multiple interaction potentials and things like that, it takes a lot of fucking time even to do simple shit.
So in
Um,
the TV show, the Abed character meets a sprite and has a long conversation, develops a relationship, has children. You encounter this sprite in the game, and when you talk to her, this list appears of things that you can ask, and it scrolls almost endlessly. Like I didn't bother to see all of the topics of conversation because I wanted to see more of the game. Um, they did a really good job of recreating every portion of the game that we saw in the TV show, and then they filled in all these other parts. Like I didn't realize that picking up sticks led to forming a switch that I could use to kill, uh, you know, things that presented, could harm my avatar. And I didn't get very far actually. I kind of gave up once I got into the dark forest because it was just a little too. It was too late. It was like 2 in the morning. I had to call it a night. But
but yeah, when you describe it, it sounds like
it's a
you
really well thought out game. It was originally started 8 years ago. The project was started 8 years ago, and the version that I am on, the first version is 0011, and I think even that had a few revisions. But I'm on version 104 now, and it's only 4 years old. And if I didn't know better, I would have thought that it was, you know, this could have existed on Super Nintendo or Genesis, like fully realized on Genesis or Super Nintendo, and I wouldn't have questioned it. It would have been any other game. It looks good. It plays good. It recognized my Xbox controller, my Xbox 360 controller, plugged it in my laptop, and right away everything worked. And that was actually pretty cool. I, I haven't played a retro game like this in a while. Not a new retro game. Everything I've been playing lately is like, you know, takes advantage of advanced rendering processes or advanced shading and texturing. And this one is a flat platformer. Actually, it's not flat. You can kind of move up or down in certain areas, like the blacksmith shop. You can walk around, go up some stairs. I haven't tried to kill the blacksmith, which is what they do in the show. I should probably try and do that and see what happens.
I guess like I have a hard time going back to retro games. I have a whole retro console that is loaded with all the shit, but it's like once there's lot, stuff that has real world fidelity, it's just hard for me to go back visually, especially when they're delivering such high frame rates where, you know, I'll never if you go back and look at the X-Men cartoons, the video games we have now are more detailed and
Oh
smooth
yeah,
because the frames are so much higher.
oh
And that's
yeah.
where I'm like, I can it hurts my eyes damn near to look at the X-Men cartoons.
No,
And that's
I
where
feel the same way. That show is from the '90s, so it never was gonna have a lot of it was never gonna have high definition. Um,
right. Well, it's not even I'm not trying to pick on that show necessarily. I'm just using it as an obvious example of like
yeah,
going back and look and it's like nails on a chalkboard visually, and
yeah.
that's how
Well,
retro
that's what
feel
I'm using this
really.
laptop for. It's got like a 1366 by 768 display resolution, so it's never gonna be my 4K monitor. And the processor itself can't handle the flying games that I enjoy. So I'm not even going to try. So I'm just installing the free games from Amazon or the free games from Steam or my NES emulator or Genesis emulator because those systems I feel like there's not so much screen that it'll make my eyes hurt when it goes full screen, but it also feels like these are things that it could do and don't require a lot of investment and time to get into. I'm just trying to figure out ways to utilize this little laptop that I have that by every right is well no, it's not underpowered. It does everything it's supposed to. But compared to my computer system, my primary computer system, it's like a calculator compared to a supercomputer. And that's not really fair to it because it can do a lot of cool stuff. I was thinking about so the Prime Day happened, and the internet goes wild, and people buy a bunch of shit that they probably don't need, but they buy it anyway because up to 70% off of some things. So my dad bought a Fire HD 10, the biggest Amazon tablet, and he decided he wasn't going to use it, and he said, "Do you want this thing?" And I went over and checked it out, and I realized this is like 100% Amazon website in my face, and they make it difficult to get out of Amazon. They have a browser, but half the sites that I went to were like all pop-ups because there was no simple way to implement pop-up blocking. I couldn't figure out how to find the settings in, to enable the pop-up built-in pop-up blocker, which was really surreal because I looked. So it occurred to me that even though it was supposed to be based on some fork of Android, it wasn't any Android that I was familiar with, and it wasn't like an iPad, which I am familiar with because an iPad is essentially a giant iPhone, and it wasn't a normal computer because it didn't have any of the normal faculties to do any of the things that I expected it to do. It was basically a browser into Amazon. It was a funnel to Amazon, and it made me think it's like man, what is the purpose of this device if not to encourage more consumerism? Because it didn't have any really fun games. It had like the slab fondling games, like Candy Crush and things that force you to constantly touch the screen. And it has good resolution, 1920 by 1200. That's decent resolution for a 10-inch display. It should look everything should look great, but the games never take advantage of that kind of resolution because they're really just funnels to reach into your pocket and siphon money out.
Yeah, there's only a couple touchpad games that I actually ended up really enjoying. There was like a gladiator game that was actually really fun. But it wasn't. I don't think it was platform specific. Even I think it was both on um, the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, or whatever. Um, and then, yeah, there's like a Marvel fighting game for cell phone that was actually really fun too. Because I always thought it was well, and then I don't know if you ever played the Katamari.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
game.
Katamari is great.
I still have it on my phone. It's actually a lot of fun if you're sitting somewhere and you can't go anywhere and you need something to do. Um, but yeah, I don't play a lot of mobile games just because it's hard to see when you have to have the controller as like the device.
Yeah, that part always
That's all
bothered me.
annoying me.
That's the thing that prevented me from really enjoying mobile games.
Hmm.
Is
Same, yeah.
and when you try to pair it with a Bluetooth device, then you're basically you're just using a controller and a really tiny screen. So now you've got this controller like right up in your face.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's really even a benefit. And of course, a lot of these games are sensitive to the motion sensor, and so if you or the gyroscope, so if you just move your controller just a little bit, it's like the old days with Nintendo when you were a kid and you jump, you move the controller with Mario on the screen or something, even though we know that doesn't do anything.
Well, I think on what's it called? PlayStation, they employ that, and maybe the Switch too now.
I think I read about it on the Switch. I haven't played the Switch. I know a few people who have one, and they all love it because they get to play their favorite Nintendo games. I think there's like a Mario universe or something like that where you can play all of the Mario games. Mario 2 is on my underpowered laptop because that's the one Mario game that I remember feeling like this is the hardest Mario game out of all of them. And it's not even really, it was never supposed to be a Mario game. What was it called? It was Doki Doki Panic. it, it wasn't even, it was starring a different cast of characters. They had to reskin the characters to be the Mario Brothers and Peach and Toad. And Toad is the only one that looks like one of the original characters of Doki Doki Panic.
Yeah, that's right. I remember playing that when it came out and being like, "What the fuck is this game style?" And obviously, they had not made that story public knowledge yet.
Yeah, it's like not Mario. It's kind of Mario. It's harder than any
More
of the other
like
Mario games.
Metroid, if anything.
Yeah,
It's like Metroid Mario.
Metroid plus Mario, Doki Doki Panic.
Yeah.
Because I remember like after when Mario 3 came out, I got that, and that game was like way easy compared to Mario 2. Even Super Mario World on a Super Nintendo, that was easy compared to Mario 2. Mario Sunshine, however, is hard as fuck. Like there's some puzzle levels that are like I wanted to throw the freaking GameCube controller, and I blame the GameCube controller because that thing was really weird. It like had some good ergonomics, but it also had some really strange. They made some strange decisions about it. I wonder if I can find a Mario Sunshine emulator.
Yeah, that's what It's a good time for people who like emulators because you can find emulators for damn near anything. Free what PlayStation 3, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
now that we're at this place where like basic entry, or mainstream computers are more powerful than you know 2 generation old consoles, like can run circles around them. There's no reason not to try,
mhm.
especially when you know a lot of these games are way past their prime. Nobody's buying them. These systems aren't even supported anymore. Good luck finding a power supply for some of them. uh, or good luck finding controllers that haven't been sat on and have one of their analog sticks like all gimped. But there's a good market for this. I mean, I remember playing Contra in when I was a kid and thinking it was the most fun. And then I tried playing it later as an adult and thinking like, God, this game's so fucking hard. How did I ever get past this level?
Because you cheated. Everybody did.
Yeah, we all used the Konami code.
Too.
It was the only
Because
way.
yeah, the developers made it so hard that they had to, and
Yeah.
that's the they used to do that shit in the '90s and like early '80s too. I mean, rather. Um, and anybody who said they didn't is a fucking liar. Like bad dudes.
Yeah, Bad Dudes was hard.
Like anybody who said they didn't use the code to get through that shit is a fucking liar, man. Because that shit was intentionally too hard because they were trying to eat up people's quarters.
Yeah. I remember
These are,
finding.
these are consoles. Like obviously these are console versions, but the originals were in most cases were made to be arcade games
Well,
that
I remember playing Contra in arcades and pumping like $5 worth of quarters into it before I realized that I had spent all of my quarters on Contra, and then it was like no,
yeah,
no, I'm gonna be here for another hour.
that game was awesome when you were a kid, man.
Yeah, it was.
Well, and then when they came out with Super Contra, they did that shit right too
Yeah.
because it was for the power of the time. It was like, oh my god, Contra with cool graphics.
Well, and they did that whole top-down section really well too.
Yeah.
Super C. There's a lot of old games, not retro style games, but old like actual would be retro. No, not even that. Classic vintage video games that when I try to play them now are so much harder than I remember them. And as you've pointed out, it's because they were made that way. That it makes me wonder: are these new retro games even being authentic if they're not making it so fucking hard that you have to cheat? Or are they just using a modern, oh, we want people to actually be able to play this game, so we'll make it easier than it should have been had we been 90s game developers?
Well, that's weird. I wonder about that because I tend to play the most games on the hardest levels
Yeah.
or on the hardest settings. And a lot of times it's meant to be an attainable goal, and there's not, as far as I can tell, there's not too many designers that are making it to the point where you can't win without using some sort of cheat code or something. But there are the series that are intentionally hard
Yeah.
out the gate, like the Dark Souls and even that last Star Wars game, Fallen, Jedi Fallen Order was. I feel like it was Dark Souls level on its hardest setting because I had it on the hardest setting for a while, and then it got to the point where I realized I was dying pretty much every 2 minutes, and I was like, nope, this isn't fun. I don't want this. This is too much. So because it's like you would be able to make progress, but it's like 2 minutes at a time, and you're getting in these situations where it's like you're fighting a person with two people with a staff, one person's shooting a laser at you, then two people have bazookas, and it's like somebody's gonna hit you once, and then because the setting's so high, you can only really get hit twice before you die. So then it's like you basically have to learn. Oh, and then they change their strategy. So if you learn what they're gonna where they're gonna be, they're still gonna modify how you approach. So then you can't just come in and learn like, oh, the timing of this and that because they'll change it.
Yeah.
So
When I think it was Silent Hill. When that game came out, I thought, wow, this is actually a kind of a scary game. And it was right around that time. I think it was Sony that was talking about, you know, oh no, it wasn't Sony. It's not related to Sony at all. A friend of mine and I were talking about the potential for having a game that uses an ECG to read brain waves, and the potential for a game that can read your responses to stimulus from the game, thereby making it more difficult or making it scarier. And we resolved that eventually the games would become so scary or so intense or difficult that you couldn't actually play them anymore. And I feel like what you just described is already on that path. It might not actually be able to read your physiological response, but in learning your behaviors using machine learning or AI or whatever it is that they're using, they've managed to figure out a way to make the game, you know, tailor itself to you in real time. I think that's actually really cool. I feel like that's the kind of thing that the games themselves have been working towards for a long time.
yeah, and I think what's funny to me now is there's been so much focus on the visual aspect of games that the machine learning has not really been paid attention to by the community. So where everybody's been trying to, what I'm seeing in these next generation systems is they got heavy GPUs, but their CPU are not that. I mean, they're not weak, but I think people are underestimating how much gaming evolution is to do with the machine learning keeping up with humans and out being able to outthink us. Whereas the visuals can be the best on the planet, but if the machine learning can't keep up, then people are going to get bored with it because half of it is going against the machine learning AI to overcome something. Like if there's no obstacle, which is obviously why online gaming becomes then it's bringing the arcade to the neighborhood arcade to your living room,
Yeah.
and you no longer have to feel as if your capacity to be better than other people is limited to going to the local arcade, and I think that's where I've never really been a big competitive gamer in that I enjoy fighting games. I don't really care about beating other people. In But there, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed beating adults at fighting games. Like that shit was my bread and butter. Where like mentally and emotionally, like I sought out adults to beat them in video games. Whereas like beating a kid was nothing to me. It's like, oh, they're just a kid. They're another kid. I don't care. Like I'm not trying to make a kid feel bad about themselves. Fuck that. Like it's not something that made me feel better as a gamer because they're kids. Like we're supposed to be on the same level. Okay, I win. But being an adult at Killer Instinct or Street Fighter or
Yeah.
some shit like that, they would get so mad. And that's what was
Oh
hilarious.
yeah.
It was like making grown men rage quit. And then if they could beat you, they get so smug. And it's like, I just be laughing because I'm like, dude, I'm a fucking kid. Of course. Like, yeah.
Well,
I don't.
I used to do that with Killer Instinct. I would go into the arcade with like $1 and run that machine. And occasionally somebody would beat me, and then I would switch to Orchid, and then I would own the machine for the next hour. It's like, oh, okay. If you're gonna be like that, I'll use the character that I know literally every combo to. Um,
Boat man, because Orchid was where it was at.
Dude, Orchid was that game's Chun Li.
Yeah, if you knew how to use her, people just cannot
They
get
couldn't.
it.
Yeah,
As long as you got the first hit, it was over.
yeah, because you could just chain all of those combos. It'd be manual, ultra, ultra, auto, ultra, and next thing you know, someone's like beating the machine. They're just like slamming their fists against it. So growing up in Bloomington, there's the IU Student Union, and they always had like the latest Street Fighter or X
Mhm.
Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Street Fighter, Capcom versus Marvel, whatever it was. And when we were in high school, me and three of my friends, we would go there after school on like Wednesdays or Thursdays, I think, and we would just play video games. And there was this one time I remember there's this one guy, he's a student, I guess, an adult. He was actually really good at the game, like quite quite impressive. He knew like every move for every character, he can play them all fluently, and so we all took our turns, running the game, and we would all beat him because we were kids and we had faster fingers, we had faster reaction time. Who knows what it really was? But I remember it was the first time that I ever saw the true rage quit moment. It was like it was one of those, I'm done with this, and he just like walked away, left his backpack.
So
He
that's how you know it's real.
Yeah, he came back like 15 minutes later, grabbed his backpack, sneered at us, and left. And it was one of those like, whoa moments because like we didn't realize that he forgot his backpack until he came back. But it was like the first time that I ever saw a legit rage quit. I don't
Oh
think I've
yeah, man.
I've never taken games that seriously. Like, and I've read about people throwing their, when like what was that the Wii, when the Wii came out, there are all these like pictures on the internet of controllers embedded in the screen in people's TV screens.
Uh, yeah, man. It's because of people like me that would come in and just like demolish other people, and because it's funny. Like I realize I just love breaking people's spirits through video games, man. Like so much fun to me because I remember I would go get my hair cut, and there was a corner shop around. That was my favorite part, was going to the corner shop and playing Mortal Kombat, because all people would come in and think, "Oh, I'm about to tear this dude up." Man, I was working people with Scorpion and Sub Zero, anybody for that matter, because I had the game at home, so I would play that shit at home and then go play it in the arcade. And these motherfuckers didn't realize I was like the ringer coming in with fatalities, and I'm gonna embarrass some like grown ass men in public. And that's what was like, man, I used to love, because then you go to like block party, um, and it's funny now thinking about it. Whenever my family would travel, I would always make my parents like take me to the arcades and shit. So I'd be in like Chicago or Florida or something, just whooping people's asses. And this is where I remember when the Wiz came, or the Wizard came out with Fred Savage, where it was not really a prospect of being a competitive gamer when we were kids, but when that movie came out, the idea started being out there. So that's when I'm like, man, there's something to this, to just staying good. So at that point, like I think my mom and parents both understood it as well, in that I'd always have to do my schoolwork and shit. But my parents would keep me, like I remember the Atari 2800 and playing Joust, and like my parents were never hesitant to get me video games. They would like, I don't think they got us cable TV um until we were teenagers, because they were trying to keep us away from that shit. But it was like video games. I had a system from the time I was like cognizant
Yeah.
until now. I mean, I still have I'm saying there's never been a time in my life where I didn't have a game console and it's funny that or some sort of gaming system, and that's where, like I said, it became because I
You know, it's funny. I
that
just sold my
I
Xbox 360 finally, and I'm all computer at this point. But similarly, I had a Nintendo, and then I had a Genesis, and then I just see what was after the Genesis. I had the Genesis for a while. I never had a Super Nintendo, but I had friends who had Super Nintendos. Then I had a no, I did have it. Did I have
did you get the um, Dreamcast or the? Because I even got the 32X.
I had a 32X for a
The
while.
32X. I didn't get the Sega CD. I
Sega
got the
CD was a that was a trap. I avoided that.
yeah for sure.
Um,
But I was also playing CD-ROMs at the time on my
yeah,
computer. So I was playing like Wing Commander. Oh fuck, I was playing the shit out of Wing Commander on my PC as a kid. So
yeah,
it was like I was just still doing PC and console as a
yeah. I
kid.
was playing like Warcraft on a computer for a while, and then there was another game that I played. What was it? It was around the time that Doom came out. There's a game on Macintosh called Marathon, which eventually became Halo, and I played that for a while. And then I had a PlayStation, and that was pretty much dedicated to Gran Turismo. And then I had a Xbox and a GameCube, and then a Xbox 360, and then a different Xbox 360 because the first one something happened to it. I think I might have sold it.
I
and
was one of those idiots that convinced my mom that the Sega Saturn was going to be the next big thing. So
oh
she
no,
those, and I got stuck in that generation for a while because she's like, "I'm not getting you nothing for a while." So I like had to ride out my Saturn for a few years
yeah.
playing that soccer game and Virtua Fighter, and
Virtua Fighter was really good though.
it was
The
fun.
Virtua
But
Fighter fighting engine itself is probably one of the most interesting fighting engines that exists because of the way that you can chain the combos together. And they're not really combos; it's like a sequence of moves that's almost realistic for the
about
time.
when the PlayStation had come out, and I'm still stuck on Virtua Fighter. I was not happy about it.
Well, it's funny. Like, I spend all this time moving up and getting these computers, and eventually I'm playing, really complex flying games with advanced graphics and universe or galaxy-sized space exploration games. And there's something about maybe it is nostalgia that makes me want to go back and play Mario, and that makes me want to try and revisit Zelda, even though I know that Zelda's a commitment. You can't just start it and stop and walk away and expect to come back and be able to play it again like it's ain't no thing because good luck remembering what you were doing if you do. But there's part of me that really is like keenly interested in setting up, you know, my little low powered laptop as a little retro gaming station because a lot of those games don't require a significant investment of time. I think that's actually the thing that I miss about the arcade is that a lot of those games, if you knew what you were doing, you could get through them in a couple dollars, and they had a really pretty incredible replay value. And I feel like some games are so in depth and complex that by the time you finish it, it's like, ugh, I'm not doing that again.
Well, and then I think you forget about the game. Well, so many of them where you had to write down the save code.
Yeah, yeah,
That was not fun.
no.
Writing down a 20-digit alphanumeric fucking encryption code so that you could go back to your save spot. Man, they had our little dumbasses learning how to code by hand and shit.
Yeah, we didn't even realize that it was machine language.
Right, exactly. Like, no, this is a save spot. Like, nope, you're just inputting commands, idiot. And if you realize what you're doing, you'd be able to back engineer it to figure out how to just modify it. And that's kind of where, again,
Yeah, you could.
if they had like made it apparent what we were doing, we would have figured it out way earlier.
yeah, you just change like three characters and you go back to the same spot, but you have max energy and the
Exactly.
best weapon and like you have you have like full super weapon or something like that and a jetpack. Never had a jetpack before in the game until the very end, but you could have one in the middle of the game if you just adjust these three characters.
Well,
Um,
and that's where it seems like Hawkthorne as a concept. Um, Obviously, it's like based on Ultima Online's interactivity, and that every game does not give you the capacity to modify the back end code. Um, but I think Ultima Online was the first
yeah,
uh, online game that allowed that. I think it might have been the first period. Um,
I
but
feel
yeah,
like
that
that's one of the original MMORPGs,
yeah,
or it's at least like an OG. When did that come out? 97? Holy shit. Yeah, that game's pretty old.
yeah,
I wonder when Warcraft came out. Not World of Warcraft, regular Warcraft.
I think it was like not too long after that.
94.
Oh, it was
Warcraft,
early.
Orcs and Humans, November 23 of 1994. But it was a
Yeah,
tabletop
okay.
game before that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So Warcraft is pretty old.
Was this the same with Warframe too, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that was like tabletop first or some shit.
Well, I know that a lot of games like Warcraft, those are based off of things like Warhammer, which is a table game.
Oh, Warhammer. That's the one I was thinking
Yeah,
of. Yeah,
Warhammer,
Warhammer
and Warhammer 40K.
40K. Yeah.
Warhammer is
Oh,
a really that's
it
like
is.
Dungeons and Dragons on a massive scale. It's like it's a not an MMORPG, but it's definitely a massive tabletop version. You don't have the same level of discrete character development, but you have characters that are pre-developed and have their own attributes, and you get to control them. And I think Warhammer is actually available on PC now. Warhammer, yeah, it is. They've got a whole series of Warhammer games.
Yeah, I always liked the art, um, but it wasn't real time as far as I could ever tell. And I was like,
No,
oh, if they made a real time version of this, I would be into that. But
no, it's definitely a like a dice roll style thing. I think I think they made one that was they made a StarCraft game that was more real time, but it's still like a top down. You know, I'm sorry, they made a version of StarCraft that's more like World of Warcraft, where you get to control your character, but there's still a heavy component of it that relies on interacting with other people. And Warhammer is just even bigger. I feel like Warcraft is like a slice of Warhammer, even though they're not made by the same companies or they're not published by the same companies, they're not developed by the same teams. There's a lot of those stories that are very similar.
well, and it's the same with like a lot of MMOs, or because like
Or just RPGs in general, I think.
yeah, but well, yeah, it's definitely RPGs in general. But I feel like when you play the Destiny and the Anthem and the Warframes, there's not a whole lot of difference between any of them except the gameplay, and the storylines are almost all
Yeah.
the exact same things. But then it's because the gamers don't really care that much to um, be critical about the storylines. Like they only care about the gameplay, so then the developers get effectively incentivized to not focus on the story.
Yeah, that's actually the reason that I am not drawn to first person shooters is that the bulk of them have very basic stories.
Yeah, if any.
If they don't have, yeah, if any. And that was actually the reason I liked Halo so much is because it had this giant story. It had a really long, drawn out story that kept evolving, and they kept taking it forward, introducing new big bad. Um, and even though it would, it didn't quite offer the same level of you know deathmatch arena that like Unreal Tournament gave us, and it didn't look as good. It was a better story. Like there was more room for the player to actually contribute to the story itself. Like what was it, Team Fortress? That's just capture the flag. All the capture the flag games are the same. It's just a matter of what control interface you're most fluent with. Although I feel like what was that, SOCOM? That was a game where you could actually communicate with other people on your team. That was like one of the first ones. I feel like
It was one of the first. Yeah,
that
I
was
remember playing that. I
that
played the
changed
SoCon.
everything. I mean, it introduced that whole player style of people who went online and just talked shit, but it
Mhm.
also introduced this quality of cooperative gameplay that was definitely next level. Like,
Yeah, you had to work with your team.
yeah, like you could tell, like if you were going up against a squad that was really tight, you could tell that it was because their communication was next level, and it wasn't just because they had one guy who was like better at sniping and another person who was really good at sneaking around. It's that they were actually listening to each other and watching the screen in areas that the person moving couldn't see on their own. You could tell. You just tell. That's the kind of thing that I think that actually is, you know, aside from separating like really high level gamers from people who just want to shoot stuff, uh, there's this level of ability to cooperate with other people that allows them to excel. And it's like you were saying in the beginning, and like at what point does the individual actually become the inhibiting factor? And
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is like, you know, that's why the esports is a lot more team based
yeah,
than individual. Obviously, there are individuals that stand out, but they don't have as it's not as easy to get people's focus on a ton of individuals in the esports world. So a few people know Ninja or whatever. I only know the dude because he's had so many articles written about him. But I've seen more articles about League of Legends, I think, about him than him as an individual.
when I think of competitive gaming, the things that stand out to me the most are when I think it was like EverQuest or something like that, like a decade or so ago. Some guy in Korea sold his roommate's sword for 50,000 US dollars or something like that, and the guy came home and killed his roommate for selling his sword. That's the stuff that I think of. Maybe it was less money than that. I mean, I might have exaggerated there. It might have been $25,000, but still, that's the stuff that I think of when I think about competitive gaming. Is that there's this world where it's really serious. It's way more serious than the average gamer realizes. It's way more serious than the average gamer's parents even are aware of. And then there are the would be competitive gamers whose parents are fully backing their children's ambition and getting them next generation interfaces and super high powered computers. And at what point does treating it like a sport prevent it from being a game? And at what point does play stop and work begin?
Yeah, I mean, and I have the same question with professional sports, period, because
Yeah.
um, if it is something someone gets paid for that's simultaneously their job, how can it also be a game that does not actually have stakes? I mean, it seems like the stakes, there are no obvious, like, nothing's really at stake. Nobody's lives are actually at risk anytime there's a game.
People's egos are on the line though.
Exactly. So when we know that it's meant a game is meant to be something with nothing at stake, then trying to pretend that we're supposed to have some importance about something that by definition is not supposed to have importance, it becomes this weird dance, which then, which I again, I think this gets back to the notion of we have all these upper caste nobles getting paid to entertain people under the pretense that there's some stakes involved, and really it's just a mechanism to keep wealth in a chosen circle. And you have obviously the people who are doing the song and dance and the football game, they still have to do the dance. Like you have to be good to be in, because they're not even in the upper echelon of that cast. They just get into the door just enough to do the dance and look at, you know, the people who participate in sporting events as observers and as fans are the ones being laughed at, who then, you know, oh, I spent $60 on this jersey, I spent $70 on the NFL sports package beyond my cable already so I can watch every fucking game. uh I spent money on season tickets even though I can't go every time. I'm throwing all this money back in to show that I'm part of something that's actually a bunch of rich people taking my money again, because they then commission a bunch of what would be poor people to just be rich enough to do the dance to then take other poor people's money once again. And it's this cycle, it's a vaudeville cycle of creating a show. It's the Coliseum all over again. As long as you can distract people, it don't, if they get a good enough show, it don't matter where the money came from. Like you could steal all their money as long as they feel like they got a good show. They'll applaud at the end and go home to their dilapidated homes that are falling apart because the state took all their money through coercion. And that's what I'm like, you know, again, it's hilarious that all these people who love Greek and Roman history, well, the idea of Greek and Roman history, don't understand when they're the Rome at the Colosseum while Rome is burning. Like all these people, oh, let me get back to normal. I want to go back to the sports. I want to go back to the NFL sporting events. Well, Rome's on fire, y'all. Don't should we put out this? No, I want to go to the football game. I want to go to the NBA.
They can't give me enough bread to want to go do that shit.
Hell no.
Just not enough.
I'm not going to Thanksgiving this year, let alone
Yeah,
some random fucking sporting event.
man, that's another thing. There's like what is it? Fauci was talking about how people should probably plan on not doing Thanksgiving because it's just an unnecessary risk. I can already tell we're gonna. It's like the signs are they're they're bright and they're big. Europe's already starting to lock down. There have been other places that are like threatening lockdowns because the numbers are rising too quickly. The numbers in the United States are rising. We had a 60,000 new case day just the other day, and so clearly people haven't learned the lesson. And we're on the verge of a new flu season. It just doesn't look good. It just looks like no matter what, no matter what people think is a good idea, it's probably not. But even today, I was listening to people talk about their support for the government, thinking that wearing masks, being asked to wear a mask is a constitutional violation of their liberties, and it's like it it's like there's a gap in reflection where being having to tolerate somebody who is willing to jeopardize or threaten their personal safety is also somehow not a violation of civil liberties. Like, I should be able to go to yeah, what's the place? I should be able to go to some place where there have been that is a risk for COVID without having to worry about getting sick because some asshole doesn't want to wear a mask. I shouldn't have to worry about that. No one should have to worry about getting sick someplace. And but making that person wear a mask violates one person's liberties by which is jeopardizing other people's liberties. Maybe I've talked myself in circles.
No, it's the notion of if two people's can't if two people's liberties can't coexist, one of those people's liberties is actually an oppression. And this is where right now the people who aren't wearing masks is oppression through exposure to potentially a deadly virus, but they're trying to claim oppression through having to wear a mask because they're trying to create this false equivalence in that wearing a mask is supposed to then be the equivalent of being exposed to a potentially fatal disease, which is obviously not true, or a potentially fatal virus. Um, and in that case, it's when we allow people who don't believe in science, who don't know any science, to then have equal footing in the conversation that we end up with these conversations where, um, yeah, they're trying to say their constitution. They don't know shit about the Constitution anyway. They know that the people who wrote the Constitution were slave owners. They don't. They know that amendments are not part of the original Constitution. They just pretend that they're originalists because the things that they then use as their shields are just ways around openly being racist. So, in the same way that these people say that they hate communism, the way that you can tell that they actually mean non white people receiving government aid is because they equate social justice in the form of the Black Lives Matter movement with Marxists. Those
Mm-hmm.
two things have become almost synonymous now. And obviously, they have nothing to do with each other. Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with socialism or Marxism. So when the right wing uses those two synonymously, that's a key indicator that what they really mean by socialism is non-white people getting government safety nets.
Yeah.
Not about owner. It doesn't even matter who owns the means of production. They just don't want non-white people to have social safety nets because then they can't exploit us. If we have social safety nets, you can't force somebody into that fucking minimum wage ass bullshit job at the mom and pop store that's actually exploiting the fucking subsidies and the workers and then using the fact that they're small to shield them from having to follow regulations or pay their workers an actual livable wage.
It's just sickening.
Yeah, and that's again, it's it's white supremacy hidden in a narrative that is meant to create one appearance of one thing that then they can convince dumbass black people to then join in Paris and they say, "Oh no, we're not racist. Look, this guy Ice Cube, he thinks the platinum plan's great. He thinks platinum. So clearly, we can't be racist. We did platinum plan. Well, I don't know why we didn't call it prosperity plan. I know there's another P word that indicates valuable assets being accumulated, but black platinum records. They love gangster rap and platinum records, so we'll call it the platinum plan. That's how we got Ice Cube. Don't you get it? Black people platinum.
Platinum, because platinum doesn't require completely demolishing the earth to extract.
Because prosperity wasn't a good enough word.
Prosperity. That's too. It's too equitable. Can't have equitability. It's got to be the platinum plan. You know, it's like the well, they couldn't call it the black plan,
Right.
even though American Express gets away with the black card, which I always thought was really surreal. Visa Platinum, American Express Black, Platinum plan.
Fuck, then I'm trying to figure out like who. I mean, obviously, only a racist would have thought this was a good idea. But how are you gonna wait until an election cycle to be like, "Hey, guess what? I could have done this on day one, but if you vote for me, I'll do this on day 366 or whatever. Not 366, like 12, 13, 1400, whatever. Yeah, it's not the first year; it's the fourth year. So yeah, I know you didn't I didn't do the platinum plan on the diamond plan on day 2 of my administration, but on day 1437 I'm gonna do something for you. How about that? How about that as a selling point? You want to vote for me now? And I don't know how, like, it would have been better off not to say shit than to announce a goddamn platinum plan. Only if you make it in. Like, why not? If you're gonna actually try to get people's votes, why not try to rush the platinum plan
Yeah,
through?
act now, and in
Yeah.
3 months we'll give you the platinum plan.
Like, oh shit, I know I forgot about y'all for the last 3 years, but while I have power and I know I might lose, let me do this thing for y'all, and then maybe ask you for a vote. Not try to coerce you into a vote by saying,
I'm,
"Hey, if you vote for me, I'm gonna give you this," because I don't trust
I
people
feel
who
like that's
in
holding
my
people.
head.
That's holding the voters hostage.
100%. That's what it
So
is. a
I,
hundred
I
percent.
like I'm like 100% positive actually right now in this moment. I'm positive that's just holding the votes hostage. If you vote for me, I'll do this thing that I should be doing now anyways. God, fuck. That's just a shitty spot to be in. Look at where we look at. This is where our country is right at this moment. The country is being held. The government is holding itself hostage. And of course, he says he might leave the country if he doesn't get reelected. And then at the same time, there's some loudmouth Proud Boys who are like, if he's not reelected, there's going to be civil war. It's like, well,
No, there's not.
of course there's not. These are also the same people who believe that they're like the Marines, the first to go in.
And he ain't leaving the country either, because as soon as he leaves the country, somebody's gonna fucking arrest his ass for some sort of international crime.
Well, shit, if he leaves the country,
Oh,
well, wait, if he leaves,
only go to Russia.
but
The only place you can go, damn near.
they won't let the Secret Service in. Who's going to protect his ass in Russia?
The Russian Secret Service will get him if they can get him there. Like, that's what I'm saying.
I
Is
mean, they
only
will. They'll protect
international
him.
place.
They'll
I,
protect him like they do their journalists.
nah, man, they'll give him fucking prostitutes to piss on all day. Hell yeah, no, man. Look, if they wanted to kill him, that dude would be gone a long. He wouldn't have ever made it into office. So this is where, to me, I don't think he is directly being controlled. Again, this is a patsy situation where they're letting him launder money over there or do some illegal shit that they're holding over his head. That then once he gets out of office, he's going to be able to retire there and have his little home and be an oligarch because he did like he did like a little lapdog should. But the issue is, again, I don't think it's the same thing that the like he's not being controlled by Putin. Putin just has to let him do his thing. He doesn't have to give
Yeah,
him orders.
no, no. Putin,
You know what I'm
Putin,
saying?
Putin's part of the group of people that benefits from disintegration of the United States. It doesn't matter who does the disintegration; it just he's going to benefit.
So all he has to do is stand by and let this dumbass do the exact dumbass business school fucking paid somebody else to take his test for him shit that he's going to end up doing, bankrupt the country even worse than it is. And you don't need a Russian director to fucking bankrupt and break the country. You just need to let this idiot do what he was gonna do and not let anybody stop him. That's what was gonna break the country in the first. Like,
Yeah.
so this narrative that Putin had a hand in it, I never believed that or it's not even
Well, no. I think that Putin's
necessary.
involvement is simply to cause chaos because he thrives on chaos.
Like that.
And it doesn't
And
matter where his chaos actually occurs because at some point somebody in America is going to get upset about it.
I think he's honestly, I think he's got too much potential dissent in his own backyard to be sowing it over here.
Yeah.
In the sense of that's where I'm like, if he takes his eye off of Pussy Riot for one fucking second, there's gonna be a revolt. So he got to keep his eye on Pussy Riot,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, there
Time to
was
be making plans for Donnie Darko
I
over
can't remember
here.
the name of it. It was like a head of state that got assassinated, and Putin didn't phone it in, and so he went into hiding. So
Yep.
apparently, there's this there's a condition where we can identify when somebody's been killed in Russia that wasn't ordered by the state because
Yep.
Putin disappears,
Yep. That's exactly right, bro.
and
That's
so
exactly right. And
so
that's
I don't
why
think that he's
time.
actively like sowing dissent or causing problems. He just benefits from it when it's not inside Russia. So he's like a cheerleader in that sense. Like, yeah, let's just do this. Let's come on, guys. And then that's it. He kind of doesn't have his hands involved, but he definitely benefits from whatever the fuck's going on here.
That's how you make patsies. That's
Yeah,
exactly how you make patsies, man. It's just stand by and let them do their own shit. Make them think that they're fucking succeeding and realize that they've been benefiting somebody else the whole time.
yeah.
And then the rug gets pulled out and they're like, "Oh, master, can I get a rug to sleep on? Oh, sure you can. 'Cause you did exactly what I wanted you to, and I didn't have to fucking lift a finger."
I mean, if if he's able to get his investment back without actually having to help, then there's no reason for him to save. Oops, that's all we got.
Set course for exceptional radio.
Exceptional Randos Show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional radio.